In this video, I want to introduce you to kind of the topics surrounding the right to a child, and then just look at some general probably dilemmas that arise through it before in my next video we'll go on to the ethical kind of solutions or comments to it. So the right to a child, well, let's start this off by the United Nations Declaration on Human Rights. So the right to a child is actually considered a human right, which I find a bit weird. So this is what it states: men and women of full age without limitation due to race, nationality or religion have the right to marry and found a family. And I want to say, how can we have a right to have a child or have a right to a child when the child is not there? I mean, I can have a right to my laptop because my laptop is here, but how can I have a right to a laptop if I don't even have one? It doesn't seem to be logical to me that. And in the UN Declaration of Human Rights, they say anybody has a right to get married and found a family, but if you're infertile, it doesn't say that you have a right to definitely go and get a child, whether it's through IVF, surrogacy or whatever. So that's where I think there's a little bit of greyish area as well. So let's look at their three processes: AIH, AID and IVF. This is all regulated by the HFEA, which is the Human Fertilization and Embryology Authority. Now, before I go on, let me just say, whenever I say HFEA, that is what it stands for: Human Fertilization and Embryology Authority. So let's start. What is IVF? This is probably one of the most common and easiest one. In vitro fertilization, more colloquially known as test tube babies. Now, this is when a sperm and an egg cell is fertilized in a petri dish in a lab, and then it's implanted into a woman. Usually, it's two kind of fertilized eggs are implanted into the woman, but rarely there's also a third one implanted too. But because many are fertilized in the hope that to get two or three which are actually fertilized to be implanted, we get left with spare embryos which actually end up just going in the bin. One of the first test tube baby was Louise Brown, and she is now a mother. She was born in 1978. This is not really, that new IVF. AIH is artificial insemination by a husband. This is basically where the woman is artificially inseminated. It might be through IVF or it might be through other ways, but she's basically artificially inseminated through the gamete of her husband. AID is artificial insemination again, but this is by a donor. So either an egg or a sperm or both are provided to a couple in order to have children through the IVF process we already discussed before. Now, they also permit freezing gametes. This means that an egg or a sperm cell is allowed to be frozen so that couples can plan their family and then when they want in later life have it. This is also creating all sorts of problems for societies. So that's another one. And another one that I'm just going to talk to you a bit about is that we have just seen recently that scientists have managed to create life. I know it's a bacteria, but they have managed to create life. So, we're moving fast, and one day if they can create an artificial womb, or if they can create an artificial actual human, well, they can through cloning or whatever, but that will be quite interesting and that will create a lot of moral dilemmas for us to deal with. Now, some of the problems associated just generally around the world is, like, for example, in India, they have IVF clinics. They've proved to be quite successful there. Now, they have allowed sex selection to happen. Just like designer babies, parents are allowed to choose whether their child is going to be a son or a girl or a boy. However, it's been counted and calculated that 90% plus of spare embryos which are discarded are female embryos. So now this is creating a bit of a problem, because is it acceptable? I understand that in India there's a big inequality between men and women, but still, are we doing something right? Because if life does begin at conception and we are just basically throwing all these spare embryos away, is it correct that we sort of select who we throw on the basis that they're a woman or a man, and we they didn't choose to be a girl or a boy. Status of the embryo, again, this has come up everywhere in any ethical solution that we look at in my next video. The main problem is, does life start implantation, conception? Where does it start? Because that means that will sort of differentiate between a spare embryo and actually a spare person kind of thing. It's going to differentiate between a bag of cells and a human, and there's a big difference. So that's going to create loads of range of kind of solutions that people present. Another problem, for example, in 2005, 66-year-old Romanian woman, she gave birth to her first child at the age of 66. I actually think this is it's just terrible. I mean, at 66, she's having a first child. I mean, like, not in a rude way, but she doesn't have much of her life left, and how is she going to bring up a baby, and what's it going to be like for that child going to school with a mum who could be his great-great-grandma, for all we know? It just something seems out of nature. And I know we're all becoming technologically advanced, and me also being young, I should be like for technology and all that. I just think some things have to stay natural, and that includes the sort of age that people have a child. I think it's not that great. Now, a lot of people pay for these treatments to have their child. Does this make them their property? If you're paying for your child, does that mean that it's like an item? You've paid for your house, it's yours, you have control over it? We're kind of changing relationships. It's all affecting society. It's causing big problems because a person is not a property, and then to have a child that you paid for, it's just a bit weird. I don't know how you guys feel about it. Also, basically, in the past, what happened where AID, which was artificial insemination by donor, was that because of I think it's called the Identity Protection Clause, they were people who were giving their kind of sperm or egg cells as a donor, they were allowed to be anonymous, and a lot of them did. However, in 2004, the law changed, and now the child has a right to find out their sort of genetic real parents, I say it like that. But this is, if people wanted to be parents, they would have had a child. The reason why they're, donating their cells, because maybe they just don't want to be parents yet. And then if somebody else and the child finds out and comes to them, and this can cause a lot of upheaval when the person didn't want the child in the first place. And there's also this de facto adultery thing. A relationship between two people, you're bringing in a third person, whether it be a surrogate, whether it be somebody else's sperm or egg cell. It's a third party in a marital relationship, and some people say it's a bit like, not cheating, but it's not morally right. And we'll look at these in more detail when I go through some of like, for example, utilitarianism says about this in my next video. But this is just a quick introduction to a right to a child. I hope this helps. Please visit my blog.